Coming up on this edition of VCU InSight, one VCU professor relives her 9/11 experience.
Dean Victor Yanchik shows us a different side to being a doctor.
And we'll take a look at the new parking decks on campus.
VCU InSight starts right now. Hello, and welcome to VCU InSight. I'm Andrew Phillips.
And I'm Nikia Wiggum. Thank you for joining us. VCU remembered the 10th anniversary of September 11th in different ways, including some who were part of a national effort to pledge to make a difference. VCU Student Government Association spent months trying to figure out how students and the college community could pay tribute to the 10th anniversary of 9/11. In their planning, the SGA came across an online group, 911day.org, and its national I Will Join the 9/11 Tribute Movement. They launched the event Sunday, September 11th on the Commons Plaza on the Monroe Park campus. Students made pledges by writing I will statements on sticky notes, like junior psychology major Paula Wallace.
I will promote the understanding, acceptance, and importance of diversity.
911day.org is an online nonprofit organization based out of Irvine, California. It was founded in 2002, and Chase Bank, Best Buy, and American Express are major contributors. Celebrities like country singer Tim McGraw promoted the I Will movement through online videos. Over the course of 4 days, over 500 pledges have been made to acts of kindness, community service, and encouraging words. After Sunday's tribute kickoff, students wrote their pledges inside the student commons where they were placed on the windows. Sophomore Chris Matthews took the opportunity to share a personal pledge. His father was inside the Pentagon when American Airlines Flight 77 hit. Matthews is grateful his father is still with him today.
I decided to say thank you to my dad because there's no other way I could really say it.
The pledges were taken down September 15th to be transcribed so they could be sent to 911day.org. People can see what others pledged to do as they remembered 9/11. When they did a final count of all the post-its and pledges, VCU students and community members wrote 603 pledges.
The 10th anniversary of 9/11 brought a lot of emotions to the forefront, as many of us remembered where we were on that fateful day. For one VCU professor, the memories are especially vivid. InSight's Justin James joins us in the studio now to talk a little bit more about it. Justin?
Thanks, Andrew. I got a chance to talk to VCU professor Mary Ann Owens. She was next to the Pentagon when the plane crashed. She talked to me about her experience and how she feels 10 years later. Driving to her job with newspaper company Gannett that fateful September day, VCU journalism professor Mary Ann Owens thought the only thing she had to worry about was the traffic backed up along I-395 in Washington, D.C. She'd heard about the attacks in New York on her radio and was thankful that those responsible hadn't targeted D.C. Then her car stopped next to the Pentagon, and in the blink of an eye, her life would change forever.
I was under the right wing of the plane. I figure from the vibrations, I couldn't have been 25, 30 feet from an engine, so I thought I was going to be crushed or mulched.
Owens first checked to see she was safe, and then borrowed a cell phone from a motorist to call her job and her husband. She then noticed another driver who needed first aid and attempted to calm her down.
Everything that I learned as a journalist and as a Girl Scout came together in that one moment. I needed to survive, but I needed to get the shots.
Or pictures of what was happening. She paid a tourist $20 for a disposable camera and snapped picture after picture, saving half for if a second plane hit. This being the only shot that came out. Of course, there was no second plane. In the end, 184 people were killed in the Pentagon and on American Flight 77. Owens was in shock. As the Pentagon burned and first responders arrived, she decided to go home. Owens says that since that day over 10 years ago, she still can't bring herself to fly in a plane, even having nightmares about them at times. She says she's still trying to wrap her brain around the amount of hate it takes for someone to want to kill thousands of innocent victims. Being so close to the point of impact, Owens suffered permanent skin discoloration and singeing. For Owens, though, the emotional scars run far deeper than the physical ones.
I cannot go to these memorials because I don't want anything. I'm angry.
Owen says that her experience taught her to value and enjoy each and every day. As she said, she's had 10 years she probably should not have. According to the Insurance Information Institute, everything associated with 9/11 cost an estimated $23 billion, with the death toll at nearly 3,000.
Thanks, Justin. Here on VCU campus, VCU Libraries chose to remember 9/11 through a sound exhibit of recordings of the World Trade Center made in 1999. 2 days before the 10th anniversary of the terrorist attacks, the Cabell Library held a reception. About 60 people turned out to hear the work of VCU Associate Professor of Kinetic Imaging, Stephen Vitiello. He spent 6 months as an artist in resident on the 91st floor of Tower Number 1. He was there to record sounds of the building in New York. He happened to be there when Hurricane Floyd hit.
Penetrate the sound to bring the sound from outside inside. The morning after Hurricane Floyd broke, I could hear the building moving, creaking, cracking. It really reminded me of being on old wooden ships.
VCU student and Marine Corps veteran Stephen Long says he was surprised by the exhibit.
I don't really understand quite what he's going for by looking at the sounds instead of, it's not really what I expected, but it was interesting.
Professor Vitiello's sound installation was on exhibit until September 23rd. And the man who made those recordings joins us now in studio with our own Nakia Wiggum.
Our guest is Stephen Vitiello, an associate professor in VCU's Department of Kinetic Imaging. His 1999 sound recordings from the 91st floor of World Trade Center 1 were recently on exhibit with VCU Libraries. Professor Vitiello, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
So how were you able to capture sound from the 91st floor?
It wasn't easy at first, I have to say. I was given a residency in late summer through winter of 1999 and proposed that I would open my windows, put microphones outside, and always be capturing that sound and somehow processing it or listening to New York from that vantage point. And the first thing that I found out when I got up there was that the windows don't open. And they'd given me the residency based on that proposal, but I couldn't actually do it. And asked all sorts of friends and listened for ways to hear through the walls, tried lasers, but there was nowhere to bounce out the window off of because we were so high, and eventually learned about contact microphones, which are these little piezo discs which work kind of like a stethoscope, and you attach it to the surface in the way that, with a stethoscope you can't hear a heartbeat until you put it on the body. With these microphones I couldn't hear anything until I found the right place on the windows. And then through my mixing board was able to amplify the sound, and suddenly the very first sound I ever heard was church bells. Then I heard airplanes, car crashes, boats, and just New York came to life, but all through the building.
Can you tell us the importance of your recordings?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, for me, that residency kind of was my transition from being a musician to a sound artist. And so from my own work, it really taught me a lot about site-specific listening and experiencing architecture, open-ended listening rather than just musical, sort of linear listening. Historically, everything changed when the buildings were destroyed, and I thought at the time maybe I should just put those sounds away, and what a lot of people said to me was that it was a way to experience the buildings that will never happen again, and a way to be sort of rooted in the memory of the buildings in a very special way of hearing that very few people had access to.
Okay. Can you tell us what was going through your mind on 9/11?
It's funny, I remember I was living about 14 blocks north, right along the water, so really, within eye view, and my mother called and said, something's happening, and I was like, oh, you're being nuts. Then I turned on the news and went, holy cow. And still didn't totally believe it. And I went down with my daughter, who was 4 months old at the time, and my wife, and saw the pillars of smoke and saw people running. And it was scary, but it almost felt unreal. And so we then spent 2-3 days, like the rest of the world, watching it on television, even though it was right outside, and slowly processing the loss, the fact that New York would never be the same, and that people I knew may have been lost, or certainly everybody I knew somebody. But it took a long time to really understand how severe it was. It felt almost like this frightening theater at the time.
Can you describe some of the sounds that you heard, like from you being like a sound artist?
I remember so many of the sounds I heard when I was in residence in '99. In terms of the sounds in 2001 when the buildings were destroyed, there's the emergency vehicles, but there's also this really intense feeling of quiet. I remember the smell of the buildings burning, which is a sad thing to say, more than I remember the sound. I remember people even running, but seeming to be this hushed tone. And in a sense, everybody was almost making room in case something happened. So I more remember silence, even if that's my memory of it. But the sounds when I was in residence were chaotic. You could hear the building moving, creaking, cracking, airplanes, helicopters. As I said, the first thing I ever heard were church bells, and the wind would roar and sometimes sweetly almost sing like an orchestra tuning up.
What do you hope people take away from your sound recordings?
Well, in the first thing, in terms of these recordings of the World Trade Center, there's this, maybe a kind of intimacy of experiencing that building, imagining life in that building, but also just the vulnerability. I mean, in the recordings that were on exhibition at VCU's libraries, you could hear the moving of the building, the creaking, the cracking, and you really sense the vulnerability. So it's not that I want people to take fear, but just an experience of the physicality of listening, and maybe an appreciation of how much more there is to hear if you really pay attention.
Okay. We've been speaking with Stephen Vitiello, an associate professor in VCU's Department of Kinetic Imaging. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
As part of VCU's Go Green campaign, the university is encouraging bike riding through new covered bike racks. There are already more than 200 bike racks on VCU's 2 campuses with close to 2,000 spaces. Campus officials hope creating covered bike racks will get people riding even more. A 2010 survey of campus bikers said that covered racks would do just that. The new so-called mobile hubs offer more spaces to leave bikes, along with a free air pump. Campus bikers say they're happy with the new additions.
Like that they're encouraging bicycle use, and the fact that they did install like air compressors, it's a pretty big, those aren't cheap, and that's a pretty big step towards like trying to get people to use their bikes.
The university says they're trying to increase the number of riders so faculty, students, and staff won't use as much gas getting around campus. VCU Go Green estimates commuters drove 40 million miles to and from campus last year.
Students sure weren't riding their bikes a month ago during Hurricane Irene. The storm caused deaths, property damage, and financial loss across the East Coast. But what steps is VCU taking to make sure students and the campus fare well in the next storm? InSight Saida Holmes reports.
With late August came Hurricane Irene, the 9th named storm and first major hurricane of the season. It took roughly 1 week to graduate from a Category 1 to 3. With sustained winds of up to 120 miles per hour. Those winds were 30 to 40 miles per hour by the time Irene hit Richmond and VCU's campus. Freshman Kimberly Ozuna was on campus and says she made staying up to date during the storm a priority.
Well, I just pretty much stayed in the dorm throughout the whole Hurricane Irene, and I was just watching the news, making sure everything was okay.
Because students who live on campus use dining halls and dormitories the most, VCU has spent tens of thousands of dollars to provide at least one backup generator in each of those buildings. Facilities Manager Associate Vice President Brian Olinger says they've added emergency power so research gets protected too.
The freezers that are used to maintain the samples, the cold rooms, the equipment that is operating, and as a result of that, we're in a good position now from the standpoint of protecting the people and the facilities of the university.
According to Associate Vice Provost Dr. Ruben Rodriguez, VCU was one of the first schools in the state of Virginia to have a full-time emergency coordinator, Larry Mullender, that meant VCU was ready for a storm like Irene like never before.
With hundreds of millions of dollars of buildings and programs and services through the university. Fortunately, we were able to get through relatively unscathed.
Something VCU emergency personnel see as a silver lining from Hurricane Irene. For VCU InSight, I'm Saida Holmes.
VCU estimates damages from Hurricane Irene at about $250,000. No injuries were reported. Since 1989, VCU has been giving high school students the chance to see what it would be like to pursue a career in the medical field. 30 ambitious high school students worked over the summer at the VCU Medical Center to see if becoming a doctor is what they hope to do after graduation. The Virginia Governor's School for Life Sciences and Medicine is a month-long summer program for juniors and seniors. Students from the state's top governor schools shadowed doctors in different areas of patient care, including surgery. VCU Educational Program Administrator Susan Haynes coordinates the shadow experience.
It confirms for them for the first time, I'm not only interested in this, but I know what it's like, and this is definitely what I want to do.
Students spend their first few weeks learning the ropes before joining doctors on their rounds. For one VCU doctor, the end of the day means picking up a paintbrush. InSight's Justin James is in the studio with the artist.
My guest is Victor Yanchik, professor and dean of VCU School of Pharmacy. He knows more than just medicine. An exhibit of his watercolors is at the Tompkins McCall Library now until November 20th. Dean Yanchik, welcome to VCU InSight.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
So how did you first get started painting?
I was looking for something that is different, that could occupy my time past retirement age, and I've always liked art, and I decided to take some watercolor lessons about 10 years ago.
Very cool. So how long have you been painting? 10 years?
About 10 years. I started in 2001.
So what exactly inspires you when you start to paint?
I have always liked architecture and buildings and colors, and so I really enjoyed looking at the way things kind of flow and how light can make such a difference in how the painting actually turns out.
So what do you find the most challenging to paint?
Probably people, because you really have to get it right, the body and the facial expressions. So you can really do a lot with architecture and with still life. It doesn't have to be what you see.
Now I know you did bring one of your landscapes here to share with us.
Yes, yeah, that's a picture of a home in Delaware. And it really wasn't snowy, but I decided to make a snow scene out of it. So it really came out quite well. It's one of my earlier paintings, actually.
Now, I know you're dean of VCU School of Pharmacy. Mm-hmm. Do you think that your artistic sense plays any sense into your day job, or do you think they're completely separate parts of your life?
That's a tough question. That's a good question, because I really think being involved in art requires that you see things differently, mm-hmm. and you make decisions differently. I really think it's complementary, because most of what I do is probably left-brained, but I think moving the right brain into your day-to-day activities really allows you to see things differently.
Very cool. So how did your exhibition come about at the library? Was it?
I was invited to do this, and I was so surprised and honored to exhibit my works there, because this is just a hobby, and whatever I do, if there's any money involved in the sale of these pictures, I give to our School of Pharmacy for scholarships.
And why have you decided to do that?
Because I believe this is I feel good about it, and I really want to help the school. And I think this is one way in which I can give back to the school.
Do you have a favorite painting that you've done?
I do. I have a painting of an old mill that we accidentally came upon in Southwest Virginia, and it was old, and it had all kinds of great architecture to it, and it's probably my best work.
Very cool. So what do you hope people take away when they go see your exhibition at the library?
I hope they take away the idea that anything is possible, and I encourage people who may like to paint but are afraid that they're going to do nothing but stick figures, that everybody can paint, and it takes time and patience to develop the art. But I would encourage as many people as possible to do something like this, because it's like reading a good book. You can't put it down.
And how long do one of these paintings take you? It looks like it takes you at least a day or two.
Oh, this painting probably took me 2 nights.
Wow.
Maybe 8 hours at the most.
That's soon.
Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm amazed. I never thought in a million years I could do this, but it's a rewarding hobby and something that I enjoy doing.
What do you find so rewarding about it?
I find the fact that I can do things beyond what I do on my day-to-day activities that gives me pleasure.
Very good. Well, we've been speaking with Victor Yanchik, Professor and Dean of VCU School of Pharmacy and artist. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
With the hustle and bustle of the school year underway, parking is always a hassle. To help out, VCU has opened up 3 new parking decks on the Monroe Park campus. With roughly 32,000 students trying to reach VCU campuses every day, and others trying to make it to their jobs, parking on city streets for faculty and students becomes tougher than a final exam.
I park on Main and Cary between like 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, pretty much for the most part. You have to park in like back alleys on like Cherry Street or Idlewood. There's like nowhere to park.
VCU is in the process of completing a $19 million project to open up 3 new parking decks on the Monroe Park campus. One deck is located at the corner of Laurel and Grace Street, with the other 2 being at the corner of Henry and Grace. The project started in March of 2011 and will add 750 spaces to VCU's campus. VCU's parking Paul Walker got exactly what he wanted.
We've learned from all the other decks that have been built around here how to properly build it. It's what we call design build. So we basically sat down and told the contractor what we wanted in a deck.
Even though VCU has provided the option for students to park on campus, VCU students still have to pay a $150 fee in order to park in the decks. It's a fee that some students think is worth it.
I complain all the time about the fee being really expensive, but at the same time it is worth it just because you're not running around looking for parking when you're trying to get to class.
With the new decks open, more VCU students will have the ability to park on campus and not have to worry about getting ticketed or rushing to find a last-second parking spot. VCU Parking says they've sold enough permits to almost fill up the entire Laurel Street deck and are about a third of the way done on the decks at Henry and Grace.
Now here's a look at events going on around VCU and Richmond.
The Historic Landmark Theater presents Wicked from October 5th through the 16th. Tickets start at $40.
The Indigo Girls are playing at the National on October 8th. Tickets are $20.
And VCU will take a breather in late October for midterms. Reading days, meaning no classes, happen Thursday, October 20th and Friday, October 21st.
With students savoring the last little bit of warm weather before fall goes into full swing, the James River is a popular hangout. VCU's outdoor adventure program is helping students interested in kayaking with tips on how to survive the rapids and have fun at the same time. They're holding a series of clinics every other Tuesday throughout the school year. Learn techniques like how to paddle and what to do should your kayak turn upside down. The U.S. Coast Guard reported last year that 52 people died of kayak-related accidents. Outdoor Adventure Coordinator Benjamin Moore says this is a great alternative to the usual Richmond activities.
A lot of people go and hang out down at like Texas Beach and Belle Isle and Pipeline, that kind of thing. It's just a different, I mean, that's a good way to experience the river. This is another way to experience the river. It's a really nice resource for us to have.
Instructors are certified through the American Canoe Association. Moore says they keep the student-to-teacher ratio small for individual instruction. A typical class is limited to 8 students. The clinic is free for any VCU student to sign up, and Outdoor Adventure provides both equipment and transportation. And finally tonight, some people would rather be in the water than on it.
But lately, membership has been an issue for the VCU Club swim team, and the reason may surprise you.
VCU InSight's Tommy Lopez has more.
It almost collapsed. But the VCU Swim Club is back on its feet this year and back into the water.
A week before school started, I counted about 5 people that I thought were going to be active members.
That number has now increased to almost 30. Back in 2008, the 35-member club hosted its own meets at the now-closed Franklin Street Pool. Not knowing if they had a home here at the Carey Street Gym, the transition saw rougher waters.
When we first started hearing about they were building another gym, we got really excited. And then when we find out there was only 5 lanes and no blocks, we were a little disappointed.
The Carey Street pool layout saw input from university officials, outside consultants, and student groups. The team is now practicing in 2 of the 5 lap lanes. The space is limited, but the team is back.
The swim club can't just practice whenever they'd like here at the Carey Street pool because of just how many people use the aquatics facilities.
We have more people swim in our pool here at Carey Street on a daily basis than we had in the entire semester at the Franklin Street pool.
Catering to the needs of the entire student body, the pool is not just a lap pool.
Our number one priority has been formal recreation.
The swim team's priority is still to expand as they look to rebuild a team atmosphere.
It's a lot more motivating to swim in a group. I probably wouldn't do it by myself, so it's nice to have other swimmers to swim with.
All right, this is a good chance to work on that turn, get it right. It is great that we do still have the team camaraderie. We get a good group of people around and staying in shape together, training together. As long as we got some water to swim in, swim club will exist.
And not just keeping its head above water as it dives into a new season. For VCU InSight, I'm Tommy Lopez.
The team says being visible has helped them out. Instead of being hidden at the Franklin Street Gym, students ask about the team when they see practice at the Carey Street Gym. The club's first meet is coming up October 16th at William & Mary.
And that does it for this edition of VCU InSight.
Make sure to check us out online at insight.vcu.edu.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Andrew Phillips.
And I'm Nikhil Wiggum. We'll see you next time.